Hello and welcome to your second tutorial on React. Today we're just going to continue with what we've been doing. And so what you're going to do is you're going to go to git bash and then you're going to just write npm start to get our server running for our React code. And here I have it. If we go to console to see our errors or anything, we actually have this error. And so what this is basically if we go to elements and if we look at our p class, so our p tag, we have another p inside, which is basically not needed. That's what this error says. And so what we're going to do in app.js, we're going to go ahead and get rid of this p right here and its closing tag as well. And now we're going to see that everything actually works fine now. There are no errors. And here is our page. To continue on with today's lesson, we're going to be talking about React props. And so basically most components can be customized when they are created, and they can be customized with different parameters. So these creation parameters are called props. Let's just quickly first of all change up some of these values. So instead of just writing something, let's actually name them app1. So props are written like attributes, and we can name it anything that we'd like. So let's name it pname, and we'll send from app.js to app1.js some, test. Let's call it test. And then in app1.js, in render, we're going to write const. And then in it, we're going to create a p1 variable. And we're not just going to write pname, we're actually going to go ahead and type in this dot props dot pname, and then our semicolon. And now through console log, we'll display our p1. Alright, now we need to go into right here, and if we inspect, go into console, we're going to see the word test. What we can also do is we can put a const here as well. Let's name our variable k1 and let's put it as a number, so 6 for example, and then right here instead of test in curly braces, we can write our k1 variable. So now in console we can actually see that the displayed text is actually our 6 from our k1 variable. We can also make a array in our k1, and we'll go to React. I put the wrong brackets, we need to have square brackets for this. Now let's go here, and we're going to see our array. We can also in our k1 make an object. So what I can do is I can type in name, let's say it's John, and then we put a comma, and then we put sir n, just so we know what this is, and we'll put dough. And here we are. As you can see, I have name John and my surname Doe. And another thing that we can actually do is selecting it all in a array, and go ahead and write it like this. So we just made another name and surname, which is John1 and Doe1. Now if I go to React, we come here into console, we're going to see our object array. To our k1 we can't assign a different constant. So let's say if we were right here to write a k1 equals like something like this, we'll just get an error in React, as we can't actually do that. We can change the type const to a type called let. So in this case, if we're gonna write another k1 variable and then check it in React, we're gonna see that it works. This is because of our let. So let basically allows us to declare variables that are limited. Go to app1.js. After our p tags, let's open up curly braces. Inside, let's type in our p1 like so. And in this case, if we go to React, we're actually going to see that our letters are showing on the site itself. However, let's say it's not a simple string like this, and it's actually a array. So let's go here, and we're going to see errors. There is a solution to get rid of all those errors. And so first of all, let's just try and get this first part of our array, for which in our k1 in square brackets, like we write our arrays, we're going to write 0, so the first element. And in our app1.js, instead of displaying our p1, what we'll do is we'll add a br tag first of all. And then we'll display our p1 dot name, just like so, and we see it right here. So we basically have our from our John Doe John, and then if we inspect, we also have our object here and our first element. Let's also talk about const. So if you declare a variable to be a const, you're basically telling the compiler that it's a read-only variable and that it won't be changed throughout its existence. So a value that is passed in as a parameter to be a function to a function, for example, will be left alone until the function exits. Here we'll make a const with obj, so object of arr, which basically returns everything in the same exact order. That's the function of map function. So basically it simply transforms one array into another array. Also in function we'll add a value. When getting to this first object, this will be the only part shown with our value. And let's also bring this inside of render. Here we are. A few things that we need to change. So we don't need to actually send k1's first element or 0 element. What we need to do is we need to send our value like so, which we will also move to inside here. Our component will be called, and with return we'll basically get from everything that was displayed from this component will be saved in our obj of arr. So our code is basically going to work 3 times as we've inserted our map. Everything is going to be stored in our component, which is obj of arr, so our object array, and we also need to display it, so we put it in curly braces and we write obj of arr. Now in app1, let's keep the p tag, let's get rid of the text inside. Let's also add in p1 dot surname, so we also have that along with our p1 name. And let's check it out. As we see, everything works fine. We have 3 of our objects and they're working 3 times. It also works in our console log, and as we see, we had a slight warning. Let's see what it says. Oh right, it's something about a key. So a key is basically where some data is stored, so we need to actually make a key for our code, which we will do in a div. And next to our function value, we also need to add another value, which is going to be index. And then in return, we're going to take up1 p name in div tags. So our div key, which will equal index. We have our app1 p name, which equals value, and we're closing our div, and so the warning is gone. In our p tag, let's add in onClick, which we are familiar with in curly braces. Let's go ahead and add in our f1 function, let's call it. And now we obviously need to add in our f1, and we'll put in a alert when click, and it will just say clicked, like so. And then we also need to put our semicolon, and instead of writing just f1 here, let's put this dot f1. And now let's go ahead and open up our React fresh. If I click on our John1, Do1, or any of them, I'll get a alert which will say clicked. The reason why we put this .f1 is for our component to understand the function. To continue, let's comment on this code, or we can just simply get rid of it for now. In h1 tags, let's add in our onClick event. Let's write the same thing as before. So we're writing the same thing as here. I can cut it out and paste it here, and let's write some text like on. Let's close our h1 tag like so, and we need a space here. Alright, here we are, and we'll get back our p1 name plus p1 surname, as it won't really do any harm. And if we go to React, we're going to see our text right here which says on. So now the click will work when clicking on our h1, as you see. Let's try changing our code in a way when we click on our on, it will turn into off instead of just the click alert function. For this, we need to use something called a state. So set state actually schedules an update to a component state object. When the state changes, the component responds by re-rendering. Props, which is properties that we've been using, and state are both plain JavaScript objects. They both hold information that influences the output of render. They are different in an important way. So props basically get passed to the component, whereas state is managed within the component, which is similar to a variable declared within a function. For creating this so-called state, our class component needs to have something called a construct. So we're going to write that right now. Inside we write our props. We're going to open this up. Then inside we're going to write super. Inside we'll write props. Now we need to initialize our state's first variable. So we're going to go ahead and type in this dot state, and we need to write our object's variable, which in our case is this clicked right here. So I'm going to write clicked, and its first value will be false. Not first value, but let's say original or default value. And we'll change our code in our f1. We'll put this set state, which we talked about, and inside we'll write clicked true, and the brackets inside should be curly braces. So let me change this. Alright, here we are. And we also need to change this on. Let's call a new function. So we put this and dots, let's say f2, and we're going to create our f2 function. So I'm going to copy this, paste it right here. This is going to be f2, and instead of writing this set state, we need to write state clicked. So if this state clicked equals on, we type it on, and the opposite of this will be off. Let's put brackets next to our f2, as we want the function to be called immediately. To make this work, we need to use something called binding, which basically makes this, so this, work in our callback. If we forget to bind and we send it to onClick, it will be undefined and our code will get an error. So we're going to write this.f1 equals this.f1.bind this. And let's take our sort of checked version, so from our f2 into right here. We're calling our f1 function where we've already binded the this. And in our f1, let's create a new value. So we put const, let's call it new val. We added this, in which we'll keep true or false. But before that, let's check if this state, so let's type in state. So if this state clicked is true, we need to place false. If it's false, we need to place true. So this is how we should write it. And we'll place our new val right here. So basically, it will be a value of our clicked. Let's try this out. If I click on off, it will turn to on. If I click it off, and it's the same with the rest of them, it works completely fine. We used constructor to place sort of the state's default value, which is false. Then we created our f1 function, which works when we click on the text which is in our h1 tags. When our state is changed, so this state clicked, we either get on or off depending on which one you were on. And that was all that I had prepared for today's lesson. Thank you so much